Do you want Bill Belichick to return as the Patriots head coach in 2024? If you do, type Y for yes. If you don't, type N for no. There certainly seems to be some momentum for changes this offseason. So on today's show, we're going to explore some potential Belichick replacements if Robert Kraft does decide to move on. On today's show, like I said, we're going to get into 10 names that could be the next head coach of the New England Patriots, as more reports, rumors suggest that this could be it for Bill Belichick in New England. So let's go ahead and dive on in, and we'll have Rolly chime in on these candidates as well. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. And look, I know the Lions have struggled a little bit as of late, but he still remains our top guy, because to me, if you're making a change, I think you should go to the offensive side of the ball, because that side of the ball has been a mess for years. And I think Ben Johnson is the top guy right now that's out there. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee he'll be the best, but I think when you evaluate Ben Johnson, as we bring Rolly in here, is it's not just that they've been efficient and they've been really good and they're top 5, top 10 in pretty much every major category here. It's that he's doing this with Jared Goff, Rolly. Not that Goff is a bad quarterback, but remember, the Rams were, ready to get him out of there, right? And they wanted Matthew Stafford. So, for Ben Johnson, I don't want to use the word resurrect, but kind of get his career back on track and having him play some of the best ball of his career, albeit not the last couple of weeks, I think it's pretty impressive work, Rolly.
No, I think it's fascinating. And when you really look at the Lions offense, outside of the first-round talent of Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown's obviously really, really good. But the weapons over there aren't that terrific. Think of this, Harrison. Jamison Williams, the former first-round pick, missed the first 6 weeks because of the gambling suspension. He hasn't done anything since he's returned. Their number 2 wide receiver is whether it be Josh Reynolds or Khalif Raymond, and then they mixed in Donovan Peoples-Jones. Obviously, the rookie tight end Sam Laporte has been good alongside the rookie Jahmyr Gibbs, but it's not like they have the most talented offense. And you mentioned Jared Goff. So for the Lions to have a consensus top 5 offense where all of their stats are in the top 10, which probably makes them top 5, with Goff and weapons that aren't anywhere close to elite outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, in my opinion, it's just impressive work. And I think Ben Johnson's a good play caller. There was an interesting play call that me and you both watched against the Bears, but we'll look past that. I just think if Robert Kraft is moving on, it's going to be to a more offensive-minded head coach, and I think Ben Johnson is the number 1 offensive coordinator in the game right now, so I think I want him as my next head coach.
Yeah, and look, we just said it. Sure, the last couple of weeks haven't been great for Jared Goff, but in general, he's been a different QB under Ben Johnson. His last season with the Rams and his first season in Detroit were not very good. Remember, he was kind of a throw-in to help match salary when they traded Matthew Stafford to L.A. Detroit's initial plan was probably, okay, we'll carry Goff for a year, maybe 2, rebuild, the salary cap, some of the roster, and then we're going to draft our guy. And sure, they drafted Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round last year, but I don't think that was this is for sure our Jared Goff replacement. That was more of a value selection. We could see him as a starter down the road, but we don't know for sure. Goff's been that impressive under Ben Johnson that they've kind of just continued to build a roster with him, and I think Johnson deserves a lot of credit for that. We'll see how the rest of this year plays out for Detroit and for Johnson, but I think he's ready to be a head coach, and I give him a lot of credit too. He could have been a head coach last year, but he stayed in Detroit, wanted to call plays for another year, and now he's got another year under his belt. I think he'll be ready for that next step if a team is interested, and I think a team like New England should be very, very interested. Now, who would you want to replace Belichick if the Patriots do move on from their longtime head coach? Let us know in the comments section below. Who would you task with replacing Bill Belichick? Next up is Bobby Slowik, the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. You cannot downplay what this guy has done with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud. And by the way, they haven't run the ball that well, partially due to, I don't love their running backs, and their offensive line has had a ton of injuries. Yet, they're top 15 in points per game. C.J. Stroud, he's fallen out of any MVP type of discussion, but he's your clear rookie of the year at this point in the NFL, Rolly. I mean, this guy's done a great job. Now, I do wonder if does he do the Ben Johnson thing where he self-identifies and stays in Houston to get another year of play calling under his belt? I could see that, but I definitely think teams are going to be interested in his services.
I mean, I'm definitely intrigued. He's super young, like you mentioned, so I do see a very possible pathway that he pulls a Ben Johnson and wants to get another year under his belt. But this Texans offense has been one of the top offenses in the league and definitely one of the best passing attacks in football. I mean, fourth in passing yards with a rookie quarterback. And kind of like what I'm brought up with the Lions, it's not like they have the most elite weapons. Yes, Tank Dell has been phenomenal as a rookie. He's out for the year, unfortunately. Yeah. But Nico Collins has stepped on. But, I mean, Tank Dell and Nico Collins are your top two wide receivers. Noah Brown has a little bit of a resurgence as well. And they have no running attack. So they've been able to move the football through the air with no threat of running the football. I think this is the credit of Slowik's play designs in Houston. And obviously, C.J. Stroud's been phenomenal. Those two have worked hand in hand. Maybe they work one more year together and then Slowik parts ways and goes somewhere else. But if he's willing to move on now, I think New England would have to think about that if they want to go offensive, which I think they do, like I mentioned, with Ben Johnson.
I think what I like about Slowik the most is I feel like he has gotten the most out of the talent they have. Like Nico Collins' career, Tank Dell as a rookie was looking like a top 20 receiver in this league. C.J. Stroud, a rookie quarterback, looks like a franchise guy already. Devin Singletary, who did nothing in Buffalo for 3 or 4 years, when he has started, he's been their clear best running back. Now, Dameon Pierce hasn't been great, but I think he's been able to play to player strengths, and that's what I always identify in offensive play callers is, hey, like, yes, you're going to have a system, but can you put players on your team either to fit your system at the highest level, or can you adapt your system to your player strengths? In a small sample size this year, it feels like he's done that pretty well. Today's show is sponsored by Game Time, the best app to get tickets to a sporting event, a comedy show, a concert, and for sure the best app when you're looking for last-minute tickets. Maybe you wake up on a game day and you decide, hey, I want to go to a Patriots game. Well, you're going to get the best prices available with Game Time. Game Time is awesome because they show you the perfect vantage point of whatever section you want to sit in. You'll see exactly how close to the field, how close to the playing surface you are, and you know exactly what you are paying for. You can also pay for parking passes on Game Time as well. A lot of these stadiums, obviously, you have to get a parking pass. So do so right now. And when you create an account after downloading the Game Time app, search Game Time in your app store. It'll be right there. We also have a link in the comments and the description for the Game Time app. Plug in promo code NFL Chat. NFL Chat, all one word. That's going to get you $20 off with Game Time. Check them out today. Best seats, lowest prices guaranteed with Game Time. Again, link is in the description and in the comments. Promo code NFL Chat after you create an account. Get you $20 off. All right, let's have fun here, Rolly. Mike Tomlin, and full disclosure, if you're going to get Mike Tomlin, it would almost certainly have to be some sort of a trade scenario. But there's been some very, kind of deep internet rumors, could the Steelers and Tomlin kind of mutually agree to part ways? Kind of similar to Belichick, but less so because, look, the Steelers are still in the playoff hunt. It's not like they've fallen off a cliff here like New England has. But let's say Pittsburgh falters down the stretch. They finish 7-10, 8-9. It's his first losing season there. You're telling me, Rolly, you wouldn't take Mike Tomlin in New England? I absolutely would. And the reason I would is because, yeah, he's been coaching for a while, but I think he's got another 10 or 15 years in the tank easily.
Oh, I mean, Mike Tomlin, similar to Belichick in a way, to where, I still think Bill Belichick's a good coach. It's more or less just the New England Patriots cannot continue with their franchise as him as GM, and I don't think he's been going to be willing to get demoted off the GM and just be the head coach. So that's why I think Belichick needs to be moved on from. If Belichick was fine to just stay and only be a coach and let someone else make all the personnel decisions, well, then I'm all in on that. But I don't think he will. So if you're just looking for a head coach with tons of experience that can get the most out of his players on all sides of the ball, I think Mike Tomlin is your guy. Very light possibility. And when I say very light, I'd say 0.1% maybe. But if he ever became available, I'd be all in. And I think Robert Kraft would do almost anything possible to have him be the successor because he wouldn't have to worry about a coach having the mental deficiencies to replace Belichick, because that is going to be a hurdle, by the way.
Yeah, and look, I again, it's a small chance. But, I mean, when Jay Glazer throws out, hey, if I'm Washington, I would try to trade for Mike Tomlin, he's not reporting that that's going to happen. But, like, I don't think he'd throw something like that out there either unless there was at least a tiny chance that a breakup in Pittsburgh could happen. Like, and I feel like it's been kind of like this for a couple years in Pittsburgh where, like, they're still competitive, but they're not a Super Bowl contender. And, look, maybe it's kind of a fraction of the feeling in New England where it's like, we don't want to get rid of this guy, but could a fresh start make sense for both sides? And I think there's a chance that could be the case. I would be surprised if Tomlin wasn't Pittsburgh's head coach next year, but if there's even a small possibility he became available, I would definitely be interested. The only question, Rolly, is if you have to trade for him, what would you have to give up? You're obviously not giving up your first-round pick. That's going to be number 2 or number 3 overall. I'd be hesitant to even give up your second-round pick. Third or fourth, okay, maybe we're talking at that point, but obviously that type of discussion
I want to get something off my chest before we move on, Harrison. I think the idea of trading for coaches is the stupidest thing in all of sports, and I would never endorse it, because if you can't believe in yourself to go through interview processes and select a good coach,
says a lot about you as an organization.
Yeah. That's on you. We don't need to go cherry pick coaches that have already proven something. You can figure it out yourself. Trading a first-round pick for any coach or trading any pick for a coach, bad.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Hit that subscribe button. We know this. It's going to be a wild offseason for the New England Patriots. Even if Belichick comes back, I would consider that scenario pretty wild. So draft coverage, free agency, coaching search, GM search, very possibly here. It's going to be fascinating. Rolly and I got you covered for all of it, so hit subscribe right now. Couple more, then we're going to kind of take a look at some, guys we're less interested in, but some interesting names out there. Eric Bienemy, Rolly, I think there's been this idea for a couple months, if Washington fires Ron Rivera, Bienemy will just replace him. And I guess that could happen, but if they were interested in that idea, then why have they not fired Rivera and given Bienemy an interim, month and a half kind of trial period here? I'm less and less convinced that they actually are going to heavily consider him as their head coach. Now, I'm sure they'll give him a courtesy interview after the season, but I just feel like they've missed the boat here if that's something they're seriously considering in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, Bienemy, obviously someone who's been in the NFL news cycle and the coaching cycle for a while now.
He's done 16 head coach interviews, by the way.
And never got one. And listen, he got off to a hot start in Washington. That offense was humming, but over the past 2 to 3 weeks where they've played, they were on a bye last week, their offense has really went downhill. Some of that can be credited to Sam Howell's bad decision-making. But the thing is, they have talented players. The O-line, yes, it's bad, and the quarterback is questionable.
They can't run the ball. That's been a big problem.
They were cooking early, not so much. And my question with Tomlin earlier was, you also have to factor in you're replacing Bill Belichick in New England. Yeah. Are you going to be able to mentally handle that? Bienemy, I don't know, man. I'm not sold.
A guy that franchises have clearly been hesitant to hire. Not only are you the team that takes that chance, but you're the guy replacing the guy.
Yeah,
you never want to be the guy that replaces the guy.
And by the way,
whoever takes this job, it's a massive. It's a massive, obviously, shoes to fill here.
Quick tangent, real quick, before we move on to our final guy on this 5-person list, is the same was also said about Tom Brady. Replacing Brady in New England had to be the most tough mental thing. That's why I thought Cam Newton was absolutely phenomenal at the time. I know it didn't work out, but I thought that was such a good decision by the brass in New England to go with a guy like that, because someone who's confident in himself, has had success in this league, replacing Tom Brady, if you gave it to a rookie, that would have been a train wreck. Even you see Mac Jones, I feel has struggled with that a little bit because he was expected to be the full-time franchise guy after Brady. And the same could be said about head coach. That's why I think you have to look really in depth at the mental aspect of things. Can they handle that pressure from a media market that is pretty difficult to succeed in, by the way?
And that's why Tomlin is an interesting one if he were to become available. Gerard Mayo, I mean, look, spin zone, for what we were just talking about. If you want to try him as like a trial, like, hey, you could be the guy that replaces Belichick. And if not, then when you do a real search in a couple of years, perhaps, if he doesn't work out, then it's less pressure, then sure. But to me, like, you can't operate that way. You got to bring in who you think is the best fit right now. I do think Mayo's worthy of interviewing Roley to see if he, sits down with Kraft and, like, blows him away with new ideas and coordinator candidates to run the offense, because that's another thing too. I don't think Bill O'Brien, it should be all on him, but to me, like, I'm scraping this thing clean like for offensively, and I want to start fresh. Maybe Gerard Mayo's got someone in mind that he'd like to bring in here, but here's Dan Graziano on Gerard Mayo. Multiple sources in and around the building say Mayo taking over next year is the most likely outcome, though there are no longer certain that's the way Kraft will go. Mayo would have to sell Kraft on who would be in charge of the offense, the quarterback's development, and personnel. That could all happen and work out in Mayo's favor, but it doesn't sound like it's a 100% real thing, and that's very interesting, obviously. I think you have to cast a pretty wide search here and consider people from all different backgrounds, offense, defense, special teams, veteran coaches, up-and-coming coaches. I think you really have to do that, considering you've had the same guy in charge for 20 years. That's why I would be hesitant to just promoting someone under Belichick, because Belichick's lost his fastball, if you will. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. I like Gerard Mayo. The worst scenario is he ends up being a head coach elsewhere, and he's awesome for 2 decades. But at the same time, I don't think you just give him the job either. I think he's got to go through the process just like everyone else. Would you want Gerard Mayo as the next head coach? Type 1 for yes or type 2 for no. If it's Mayo or the field, I'm going to take the field. But again, I certainly am not opposed to the idea of at least giving him a shot. Okay, some other guys real quick, rapid fire. Frank Smith, the Dolphins OC. The hesitancy there is that's Mike McDaniel's offense. Smith doesn't call the plays, so take that for what it's worth. Kellen Moore, I feel like he's lost a lot of luster here. Like, I don't know what's going on with the Chargers this year, and it's kind of twofold too. Dak Prescott, who played pretty well under Kellen Moore for a few years, but now is having the best year of his career under Mike McCarthy, who kicked Kellen Moore out the door. So what does that say? I'm not sure. Shane Waldron in Seattle, they've kind of hit some skids here. That's a tricky one. Dan Quinn, I like him if you do go defense. He's been a head coach before, but I would prefer to go offense. And then Jim Harbaugh, look, I like Jim Harbaugh. If he wants to be the Patriots head coach, I would absolutely hire him. I'm not sure that's a fit for either side, though, because I think if you get rid of Belichick, you need to go GM, head coach, 2 separate people. Harbaugh may want both, and that setup has flamed out here the last few years with Belichick. So if Harbaugh returns to the NFL, I actually don't think New England is the ideal fit. All right, those are our Bill Belichick replacements. We'll probably discuss more candidates as time comes, especially if new reports come out about Belichick exiting. We'll see. Maybe he returns. Who knows? Month left in the season. Hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow we will have a brand new 3-round mock draft around the New England Patriots, so stay tuned for that.